Hi everyone. Today I would like to share on how to perform an assessment on software vulnerabilities. There are several ways actually to do that, and I want to share the one known as Common Vulnerability Scoring System or CVSS. This is also the way to perform IT risk assessment on system. Common Vulnerability Scoring System (CVSS) is based on three main metrics groups: base, temporal, and environmental. Base group is the intrinsic qualities of a vulnerability. Temporal group is the characteristic of a vulnerability that change over time. Environmental group is the characteristic of a vulnerability that are unique to your environment. For example, your company has a talented programmer that can write a customized script which can detect and remediate DDoS attack. While in other companies, perhaps they do not have such resources and environment. To reflect the severity of a software vulnerability, there is a rating scale in both numerical and qualitative representation. You need to assign value in base metric, temporal metric, and environmental metric to get the score at the rating scale. For the ease of understanding, I put the metric in the table format. Let's go one by one. Under the category of base, number 1 is attack vector. The question you should ask during the risk assessment: can the software or system vulnerability be exploited from network or adjacent or local or physical? The vulnerability that can be exploited via network has the biggest impact and therefore given higher score because such vulnerability is exposed to a number of attackers across the internet. Adjacent means the attack or exploit on the vulnerability is only possible from the same network. Local means the attack is only possible if the attacker has the read or write or execute privilege in the system. And physical means the attack is only possible if the attacker physically touch or manipulate the system. Number 2, attack complexity. The question you should ask: is there any specific vulnerability condition that exists which contribute to any potential successful cyber attack? For example, it is easy for the attacker to exploit the vulnerability condition if there is no protective technology or security parameters such as firewall or IPS exists in the targeted company. Number 3, privileges required. Question you should ask: is there certain level of privileges an attacker must possess before successfully exploiting the vulnerability? Number 4, user interaction. Question is: can the vulnerable system be exploited without user interaction, or user interaction is required, such as executing a JavaScript for the attack to be successful? Next, number 5, confidentiality impact. Is there a total loss of information confidentiality as the result of system being exploited by the attacker, or there is some loss or there is no loss? Number 6, integrity impact. Is there any total loss of integrity? Will the attacker able to modify all file, or there is no loss of integrity? Number 7, availability impact. Is there any total loss of availability when the attacker able to fully deny access to resources, or there is no impact? Number 8, scope. Scope is the ability for a vulnerability in one system to impact other resources. For example, vulnerability in Microsoft Word that allows an attacker to compromise all system files of the host OS. Under the category of temporal, there are 3 assessment questions that must be asked during software vulnerability assessment or IT risk assessment on system. First, exploit code maturity. This measures the likelihood of attacker exploit the system vulnerability. For example, public availability of easy-to-use exploit code increases the number of potential attacks and thereby increasing the severity of the vulnerability. Second, remediation level. The question to be asked during IT risk assessment: is there a solution that can be applied to patch the system to address the vulnerability? The less available patch, the higher the vulnerability score. Third, report confidence. This measures the degree of confidence a vulnerability is known to exist with certainty. The more a vulnerability is validated by the vendor or other reputable sources, the higher the score. Under the category of environmental, we assess the importance of the affected IT asset to business in terms of confidentiality requirement, integrity requirement, and availability requirement. If the confidentiality requirement is given priority, then integrity and availability, the confidentiality requirement must given higher score than both integrity and availability. Modified base matrix is the matrix used when there are a modification exists within the environment. For example, the Information Security Department has deployed EDR, and with this EDR, the value in base matrix have accordingly changed to lower score. Those are the questions that must be asked when you perform any software vulnerability assessment or IT risk assessment on system. CVSS is a well-known scoring system which is used in many IT vulnerability and risk reports, like the one shown here in the ESET threat report. There is also a certification course on CVSS if you are interested. Thank you for watching my video. Hope you have enjoyed and learned something from it. Take care.